now we want to switch gears and begin talking about millennials and their money. Now, there's a lot of hype around millennials, the way we think, the way we work, the sort of jobs that we want. And I'm saying we because I'm part of them. Hata kama ni koko mwisho, tail end, I'm still a millennial. But especially when it comes to money, there's a lot of talk about this particular generation. Are we richer or are we poorer than previous generations were? Are we strapped with more debt? Are we better at handling financial situations? Are we better or worse educated? Are we more resilient? What are our values and our principles? Lots of different questions about millennials, but today we want to focus in on millennials and money. And joining me on the show, I have Joanne Kinyua, who's the account manager at Rome Tech Solutions, and Ben Njathi, who's the head of financial services there as well. Karibuni sana to the show.
Thank you.
Now, most millennials today, it's an interesting generation for sure, right? We're very much about, it's not just about having a career for 40 years. We want to have passion and we want to have excitement for what we do. We really want to, be present in everything that we're doing. And I think that applies to all different facets of our lives now, including finance. And one of the things you'll notice is a lot of millennials are much more educated, I would say, than their parents' generation, and with that then also hopefully earning much more than their parents were. But then you look at the spending patterns as well, and there's just that frugality was just never passed down. I don't know if you guys have the same sentiment, so you can see the same sort of trail, when you're looking at the younger generation now. Ben, let's begin with you.
Well, Trace, thanks for having us. It's actually a very interesting discussion, really. It's been discussed in different facets, different variables, different perspectives all over the world. And it's actually true, we do face this similar type of conversations or challenges, if I may say that. Just looking back towards what my parents tell me and even my grandparents, there are quite a couple of few things that from their perspective make us really seem as if we really don't know what we are doing, but that's in a polite and in a good way. So for instance, you find a young millennial like myself in the mid-30s, as soon as I get a good job, the first thing I want to do is buy a car. So I think we actually misguided by a couple of few things. The social media itself is one particular point that really misguides us. That's number one. I think number two, the fact that all we want to be is like the next person. The next person being hyped here and there.
Yeah.
You want to buy a car because of so-and-so. You want to dress like this because of so-and-so. So I think it's quite very interesting, this generation, how it's continuously evolving into different types of, let me say, X type of generations here.
Right.
Yeah.
And for you too, Joanne, I mean, even just as a lady and some of the different pressures that, us babes are facing. It's rough out here. But, there's all sorts of pressure. You want to have the latest hairstyles, the latest fashion, have our nails. People are spending dropping 10 G's just to do their nails. There's this, in many ways, it's what our parents would say is misplaced priorities. But for these young women, and many of us young women, it's quite important. Maybe you can touch on that as well.
I agree with what Ben said. I think we're living in an age and era where I think there's a lot of influence from social media or what the next person is doing. So you really want to live up to the standards that they're setting, but really they're not grounded on anything, solid. When it comes to how you're spending your money, it's just about living in the time, as long as you look like you're living it large.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And part of that living large is wanting to be seen in the coolest places. So sometimes it's not even necessarily about having, but to say that I have been, I have gone, I have shopped, I have tried. And so food and eating out particularly is one of those big things. There's a foodie culture now too on social media. True. Where people want to post their fancy drinks and post their fancy appetizers, and they're spending a lot of money just to do that. And it's like a social status. You say, oh, you haven't been to whichever restaurant, you're not with it. And so beyond the having, it's also about it's that fear of missing out, or FOMO as we like to call it.
True. I actually think at times I ask myself, why wouldn't Central Bank really come up with a social media scorecard, based on how you consume your life? We consume our lives in different ways. You consume your life by possibly going to different types of clubs, wearing like this, talking like this, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So those are some of the things I think from a financial point. As millennials, really, we are affected. At times I ask myself, what would in central bank really come up with a social media type of a scoring cost, just to make sure we have a currency just for the people who are actually very interactive online, very interactive in terms of social status and all that. And I actually agree with what you're saying. So most people do want to find themselves a bit warm towards particular things that make them more comparable or competitive to different people. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know how many of you guys are actually saving for retirement, because that is a huge, huge thing. You know, our parents' generation, that would be all they would think about. Like back in the day with them, I guess, if you didn't have a pension, like you're not cool. What do you mean you don't have a pension? What do you mean you don't have savings for retirement? Here, people are blowing off all their money. You know, they want to travel without any thought to what's going to happen in the future. We want to drive these fancy cars, live in the poshest neighborhoods. And are you guys saving for retirement? I'd really love to know. 22999 is the SMS sign. If not, why? I know a lot of people will say maybe their finances and the strain, but we've also heard many times that you can start with even 10 bob, 20 bob. It's just about that discipline.
Very true.
And so, you know, with that, there's a report, a 2018 report by the National Institute on Retirement Security, found that 2/3 of adults aged 21 to 32 have nothing saved for retirement. Even among those who had something saved, the overwhelming majority were far behind where they should be. Millennials, it sounds like, are just simply not saving.
Which is actually very true. I think there's nothing really to hide. It goes back to a couple of few things. It's more of not a yes and no situation. You find that most millennials, what they want first is material things, which is good. It's good to have all the material things, but then again, it's also good to think about the future and all that. So I think maybe from a parental point of view, most parents would then need to advise their kids that it's actually important when you get your first job, however big, however small it is important to start putting aside some small chunk of money as savings. There are quite a number of ways you could save. We have the traditional banking, we have the modern ways of saving, quite a number of many ways that we could actually start saving. Just like you say, someone would start saving as little as 10 shillings, and before you know it, they can actually do something with that. I want to talk in particular about the car. You know, the car is actually something very interesting. So you find everyone who actually gets a job in these millennial type of group sets, maybe between 24 years all the way to around 34 years, the first thing that comes into their mind is a car. And I don't want to seem as if I'm being a bit biased to the Cheers Baba group, but I think those are the ones who are most likely affected, if I may say that. The Subaru lovers, which is a good thing. You find that the minute you get your first job, the top of the mind, it's not even how to start saving. It's not even how to start having a retirement plan. It's not even how to have a type of a medical savings for your parents, or even to think about your family, or even how to think about enhancing your education. First thing is really a car.
Joanne, and talk to us about why that's so risky, because you know what, a lot of these guys are out here with no emergency funds. If any sort of incident was to happen, a lot of them would find themselves stranded. And even beyond that, you know, God willing, you know, you're well and safe. But even when you start thinking about the future and all these different goals that you have, because at some point you have to get serious, right? So just talk to us about, just as we continue to emphasize that point about the way we spend our money and what we prioritize it on, how we kind of just need to take a step back and say, Maze, okay, I need to have fun, and it's exciting to travel and to live large and whatnot, but there needs to be a balance, doesn't there?
So I think the risk, as you've said, is now looking into the future. You don't want to find yourself, now you're in your late 30s, you don't have any savings plan. At that point, maybe you started a family, you're looking at their education, their health, and even maybe you've not settled down on housing, so you're still renting a house out there and looking at also where the house rents are. It would be, I think you would be at a very risky point. So I think we need to be more aware that as much as there's this YOLO, you need to also, you know, think about your future, start planning now. And I think also the influencers out here need to also speak that message.
Sure.
Not just speak about how they're traveling large, living large. They need to also educate these young people who are also very keen in following them on how to start thinking about their future and start thinking about it now.
Very interesting pointers right there. And we're going to take a short break with that. But again, you can keep sending in your feedback to 22999. That's our SMS line. You can also reach us on social media at Switch TV KE on Instagram and at Switch TV Kenya on Facebook and Twitter. And remember, I'm asking you, do you have savings? Are you, as a young person, as a millennial, saving even for retirement or for a bigger goal in life, like, say, buying a home, not necessarily a car? What is it that you are prioritizing in your life and with your money right now? 22999 is the SMS line. I'll be back in just a bit. All right, everybody, welcome back to Full Circle with Joyce. We're continuing our discussion here today on millennials and their money. And of course, my guests in studio are from Rome Tech. With me, I have Joanne Kinyua, who's the account manager there, and Ben Jathi, the head of financial services. Karibuni tena to the show once again. Now, you know, as we continue this discussion, I think there's a few things that we kind of just have to acknowledge. So one, we're saying that there's certainly a different mindset with the way even we perceive money today as millennials than the way our parents and our forefathers did. It seems like we're not as afraid, right? We're not as worried. Like, we're just like, liwe liwalo, right? Like, yes, tomorrow shall be, que sera, sera, like, whatever. Like, we'll figure it out tomorrow. But we're also saying that's great, but to some degree, there's also a significant measure of risk associated to that. And so while managing money is also, there's a math to it, there's some like arithmetic to it, a code or a science or a formula to it as well. There's also that need to strike balance. And so how do we explain ourselves to the world? How do we explain ourselves for them to understand that, you know what, you guys stuck in the same position for 40 years and I don't want to do that. I want to be able to live and enjoy the world. I want to see other cultures and inform myself and my mind and my growth. So how do we find that balance, and how do we also just find common ground intergenerationally? Maybe I can begin with you, Joanne.
Wow. Well,
it's a loaded question.
Yes, it is. There's a lot to it because, as you said, we're living in a different generation where we feel we need to do more. We just don't need to traditionally, as we could say, sorry, our parents used to be, it's about the savings, it's about the pension, it's about building that house and educating my kids in the best schools. We feel like we want to travel more, we want to get to know more cultures. So where do we strike the balance is the question. So I feel like the stakeholders in the market who are the professionals behind the science, the arithmetic there, to tell us, you know, you need to put 20% of your salary maybe in a savings account, or is it 30%? They need to be more, you know, loud out there to tell us why should you do this? Because sometimes we do some things in vain. But if there's someone behind there to tell us, this is why you should do this, this is why you should have a pension plan.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, you know, we need to be risk averse.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there has to be that balance.
Yes.
So you're saying we need more examples, really, then, of why doing this actually pays off. Why, you know, not going on that extra trip to New Zealand pays off, and instead putting that money aside in a stock market or a money market fund or whatever it could be.
Correct.
Why that pays off.
Yes.
Now, let me come to you and ask now concerning even just the priorities. Again, it's not just with money, but even just, or career, but even with life itself. And you find that a lot of millennials now, we will postpone even, say, marriage or starting families or just getting serious and starting a business. We'll kind of postpone that for a while, you know, just to sort of experience life and the world and have fun, right? And I wonder if that then has anything to do with even our own perceptions about money.
So I actually think it has to do everything about money and quite a number of other things, even the upbringing. So if you compare our parents and our grandparents, they usually had a very different lifestyle of how they would look at money and how they would actually move with money, as far as the savings is concerned, as far as consumption of the money itself as a commodity and all that. We internally do have a micro lending ecosystem that is called Senti, an amazing product that is being consumed all over the country as we speak right now. And from the statistics that we've gathered there, you'll find within the millennial gap of generation, between 24 years to about 27 years, the default rate is quite very high compared to people just above 27 years.
On debt?
Yes, on
Wow.
debt, yeah. Default rate, yeah?
Yeah.
So you find up and above 27 years, all the way going to about 40 years, the seriousness and commitment towards how they consume the money, which is given out as a loan, is actually different. So the first few years within this particular section of the generation, the seriousness is very low.
So it's like we're not understanding debt is bad. Like,
Yeah.
debt can get you in a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
Wow. And
That-
that's actually backed up by your research then?
exactly.
By your data?
Yes, yes. We've actually been continuously looking at it, and we're finding most of the defaulters are between the 24 years all the way to around 28 years. And for obvious reasons, again,
Yeah.
it goes back to what you were asking. So I think from the parental standpoint, most parents need to continuously encourage their kids on how to save, how to
Right.
consume debt, and how to have debt management.
Right.
But it's very important, and how to actually know what to take a loan for and know what not to take a loan for. We usually
Right.
joke around in the office and say money has morality.
True.
It would actually be very weird and very strange for me to take a loan, for me to go to Naivasha, maybe to just spend about 10,000 or
But there
20,000.
are people doing that.
There are people who do that, and from our research, it's actually found out these are the people between 24 years to around 28 years. These are the same people that once they get a nice, good paying job, the first thing they do is that they jump onto the next amazing car, onto the next amazing trend here, and so on and so forth. So it's we actually do need a lot of education to be able
Right.
to control this.
Speaking of that education, do you think that's mostly like a family thing? Or is this now, are we at the point where I'm as this needs to be a course that we're taught in school? Joanne, what would you say?
I agree. It should not just be from the family setting. I think all around, because we're not just being influenced by our parents, as you can see. It's the social media influencers out there.
True.
It's the trend makers, the trendsetters who are out there.
Yeah.
I think they should also be, aligned to try and talk to the generation or the millennials about this. Because as Ben said, it might seem like a small thing right now, but when 10 years down the line you want to walk to a bank and get a loan, maybe to get a mortgage, that one loan you took 5 years ago
Yeah.
to go have fun, defaulted on it,
Yeah.
is the same loan that's going to buy you to get that mortgage.
Right.
Yes, or
Right.
that
Or
financing.
you'll have to pay exorbitant rates because you can't put down a deposit.
Correct.
You can't, have that cost of whatever you're going to have to pay the bank.
Yes.
Ben, someone on SMS is saying, "Hey Joyce, loving the show. Question to the guest: how do I have a constant saving plan, bearing in mind with the economy, lifestyles, and the pressure to get more money and even more vacations?" Exactly what you're talking about. So I think we certainly do need to acknowledge, by the way, there's significant pressure
Yeah.
that this generation is facing thanks to social media.
Yes.
And again, that goes back to your own personal mental resilience and defining for yourself who you are, what your goals are, and where you want to be in life, because you cannot live your life from someone else's eyes. Like, do it for yourself. But to this question, how does one begin building that constant and consistent saving plan in light of the economy, people struggling to find jobs, lots of youth in Kenya unemployed? Where does one begin?
So I think as far as savings is concerned, you can actually save as little as you could or as little as you're able to, because you actually consume money every single day. Whether you have a job or you don't have a job, you can save as little as 5 shillings, you can save as more as 100 shillings, even more as 10,000. But again, it goes back to your budget. So you have to ask yourself, for instance, the question there, how much does that person earn? They could be earning, maybe, I'm just giving an example, maybe 50,000. They have to calculate each and every expense they need for the 30 days and just go work backwards, look at 30 days from the day they get a salary, how much would they need to have at the bank at the time?
Yeah,
you know.
need and not want.
Yes,
So it also
exactly.
calls for very honest assessment of ourselves. And it's not. This is not to say that don't go on a vacation, right? It's saying plan for it,
Yes.
so that we're not impulsive. I think that's the thing that's with our generation. We're very impulsive. Like we'll see, oh, these are the latest shoes in town. Oh, I'm gonna grab a pair. But even when you want a vacation, plan for one, right?
True, very true. And actually, you know, it's actually interesting, because you find most of our generation, I mean, most within the generation from the millennials, were the people who are actually going out for holidays a lot.
Yeah.
You know, we're the same guys who are riding on SGR, going down to Mombasa to have fun here and there, you know, all those things. Where's the money coming from?
Yeah.
It's definitely coming from a savings type of a culture. You can save from as little as you can,
Right.
and as much as you can, obviously. But it's
Right.
always good to ask yourself at the end of the 30th, at the end of the 30th period, maybe if you're a salaried person or a business person, how much do you need to have at the bank and saved amount? Because you actually save for so many reasons. You don't just save for holidays, you save for a health plan, you save maybe to try and buy something else that you've been trying to get that you cannot afford at the time.
Wow, and we're going to have to wrap up this discussion in just a few minutes. But just before we close, I'd love for you guys to just give me your final comments basically on millennials and money, and I guess how, because it's a hard conversation to have, because I know a lot of people will feel like we're discouraging them from having fun or, you know, enjoying the world and globalization and all that good stuff. But I don't necessarily think that's what we're saying. I feel like what we're saying is that there has to be that balance. There is certainly a measure of wisdom that needs to be applied to a lot of what we do. And so the words that we've thrown out, you know, being consistent about the way you live your life and what you spend on, prioritizing, not being impulsive. Those are, it seems like we need to go back to those roots. Our parents were doing something right, weren't they?
Yes. I think just to echo what you said, over and above everything that can be said out there, despite the many plans that will be given for you to start, you know, having that savings plan, it still goes back to you as an individual. So discipline is key. As you said, again, you know, do not spend where you don't need to spend. So discipline is key, being consistent with that plan, because you now have an end goal that you're working towards. I think we'll get somewhere once you know, ground yourself with the discipline first.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Ben?
I think it goes back to understanding really what you want to do with your money. Because there are some things that you really don't need to do. It comes back to prioritization. So for instance, if you're earning X amount of money, there are a couple of few things that you have to take as top priority. Food, that is one. You don't have to forgo food for a shoe. You know, transportation is something else. Maybe a health plan and a savings. So it goes back to really understanding what you really want.
Final shout outs here before we wrap up. Midhamuwa Ndundu says, present, watching from Kagumo, Kirinyaga. Juanita Mwangi says they are richer physically but poor mentally, and that seems to be echoed by Iman James, who says, greetings to the guest. You can be rich but still wewe ni poor mentally. Tafakari hayo. Indeed, certainly, because also you have to be aware of where someone's money comes from, right? So some people are rich generationally, so if you're going to be sweating out your last coin to try and keep up with the Joneses and they have a whole vault in their house, you'll be in stress, right? So wisdom. Live your own life, run your own race, stay in your lane, and God will bless your efforts for it. There's something about that honest hard work that, you know, is always honored. Thank you to the both of you for being here today.
Thank you for
I
having
really do
us.
appreciate your company and your insights. Now, guys, that's it. We're getting to the end of our programming here today. But just before I leave you, let me remind you that Aladdin is offering a 90% discount when you shop off their clothing or groceries online. Here we are. As our dear audience on Switch TV, they are giving you an extra discount of 200 Kenya shillings when you use the coupon code SWH200. There's also a deal where anyone who shops amounts totaling to 1,000 bob and above will get a chance to choose any product that will be labeled 1 bob only, and that could include even a phone. Your goods will be delivered to you within 48 hours of request, so you can take note of that. Asanteni sana to all of you for your company and for being here today. I do appreciate every one of you. Thank you guys for joining me on Mashujaa Day holiday. Don't take it for granted that you've come out of your beds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to all of you who've been a part of the show, asanteni sana to the crew as well. Until tomorrow, we'll be back here with more Full Circle with Joyce. Have yourself a wonderful time. We'll see you soon. God bless. Ciao.